One question that I got on Mazda66.net was, what is the Purge solenoid valve and what does it do? Here's your Purge solenoid valve. This is the 93 to 97. If you follow this solenoid, it's connected directly into this hose right here, this first hose, or pipe. This first hard pipe, as everyone's familiar with seeing these pipes on the top of their intake manifold. You follow that pipe all the way around. It comes out right here, attaches to this, and this runs all the way over to your charcoal canister. This would be the outlet of the charcoal canister, and this would be the inlet. The inlet comes from your fuel tank. It's not fuel, this is just vapor. This is fuel vapor. And this hose goes down there and plugs into another hard pipe, and that hard pipe shoots all the way to the back of the gas tank, back down here. Fuel tank sits down there, and at the top of the tank are two vents. All of your fuel vapor is going to gather at the top of the fuel tank, so all of your vent lines are going to be coming out of the top. So one comes out of the top and goes to the filler neck, and that's why when you undo your gas cap, you'll hear a whooshing sound. Now if you notice that that whoosh sound is one getting louder and getting longer in duration, then you might want to check your Purge solenoid valve. And those vents run to lines, and those lines go all the way to the front of the car. And it runs beside the fuel line. They're kind of like brother and sister. You got fuel in one line and vapor in the other, and they both run up here. Then they split off, and the fuel line goes up to the fuel rail, and the vapor goes in the charcoal canister, and that scrubs the vapor. I'm sure it scrubs it somehow. Charcoal is a cleaning media. And from there it goes over to your Purge solenoid valve. And after that line gets into the Purge solenoid, it will then go down to this second line. There's two lines here coming out of this Purge solenoid. One's from the charcoal canister, and this one is to, the second line is to the throttle body. Vacuum, that's what gets your vacuum. So that's basically the entire Purge solenoid system. It sucks from the side of the throttle body there, and then sucks through the Purge solenoid all the way to the charcoal canister, and then all the way back to the check valve, and that's how that suction goes. So all the fuel vapor is then vented into the intake manifold with the rest of the incoming air. It comes in as vapor or fumes. There is no liquid involved in that process. It is just fumes. And once it hits the intake manifold, of course, then it gets distributed to your combustion chambers. And that's how your Purge solenoid system, otherwise known as your Evap system, works. For the Mazda 626 anyway. Will also be handy for just about anyone that owns a car that has a Purge or Evap system. It's not going to be exactly the same. The Purge solenoid might have a different switch mechanism. It might be off all the time, and when fed 12 volts it might switch on. Or it might be on all the time, and when fed 12 volts it might switch off. So there's two different systems there. And you can check out Scanner Danner's video, which was awesome, and that video is right here. Oh. Now your Purge solenoid valve is a switch. It's basically like a light switch, either in the on or off position. The Purge solenoid system only works when some specific conditions are met. And those conditions are: 1, after your car is warmed up; 2, while driving it in gear, so you can't be at idle. Your Purge solenoid system does not work at idle. While you have the accelerator pressed, so you can't just be in gear coasting. The gas pedal has to be down in order for this switch to open. And it's an electromagnetic switch, so it's an immediate switch. You know, it's on or off. And one problem someone had was that his solenoid valve was faulty, and it kept clicking, click, 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 click. That's the magnet, keeps turning on and off. That's kind of a funny situation, but it was easy to track down. And then the fourth is when your oxygen sensor is correctly working. If your oxygen sensor is faulty, then your Purge solenoid is not going to work either. Bad O2 sensor will knock out your Purge solenoid. Now we'll get into the theory. When your Purge solenoid is open, there is a two-way check valve. Let's just put it, just for demonstration purposes, in the middle of the vehicle between the gas tank and your charcoal canister. When that solenoid is open, it sucks all the fuel vapor all the way to that check valve. Sometimes when that check valve goes bad, I have heard of instances, and it is possible, for fuel to actually get sucked through the vapor line all the way into your charcoal canister, and that would be bad. And one symptom of fuel getting in there is it smells like rotten eggs. It'll smell like a landfill. It will reek. And it'll be very noticeable because your charcoal canister sits on the driver's side, and any of that smell is going to vent right through this crease where the hood sits in. And if, let's say, you are traveling at speed, it will go right into your window, and you'll be able to smell that pretty easily. One question I had was, does the Purge solenoid actually create vacuum? No, in some cars, there are dedicated vacuum pumps that will aid in the vacuum as a secondary system. Normally, your cylinders are the sole contributors to vacuum. Every time a cylinder goes down, it creates suction. That's where your intake manifold will suck in air from your intake. So that's why you will hear a sucking sound sometimes from your intake, because it is actually being sucked. All of the air is being sucked in here, and along with that suction, I don't know the exact calculation of how much pressure is being sucked in. I can get that number for you. It's right here. That much PSI or kilopascals or whatever in pressure is being sucked in. That will also suck in the fuel vapor. As long as your cylinder compression is good, you don't have to worry about suction. The solenoid valve, none of these solenoids make suction. The only thing that makes suction is your engine. Does the Purge solenoid valve suck fuel vapor from the gas tank itself? No, it does not. It only sucks vapor all the way back to the check valve. And like I said, if that becomes faulty, if your two-way check valve becomes faulty, it might be possible to actually suck fuel up. Question 4. Will disconnecting the Purge solenoid have any detrimental impact in the short or long term? The answer is no. Other than possibly reduced gas mileage, and it will be negligible MPG loss at that, you shouldn't notice any actual drivability issues. If you do notice drivability issues, then it's possible that you have multiple issues working together to create that issue. So I don't think that it would just be the Purge solenoid. It's basically the same thing as leaving your gas cap loose. If you have a bad Purge solenoid, is one thing that you can do. So let's say that your Purge solenoid stops working, it's not venting fuel vapor. And like I said earlier, you have a secondary line that runs up to your filler neck. So one thing that you can do is kind of just barely loosen your gas cap. All of that fuel vapor will then vent out of your gas cap. Now there are dangers associated with that because fuel vapor is flammable. So you don't want to like smoke a cigarette or light a lighter right around your gas cap if your Purge solenoid is bad, because, you know, that would be bad. Who knows? You could blow up your car. Who knows? Yeah, avoid that if possible. Purge solenoid is basically just an on-off switch. That's all it does. It's an electromagnetic switch when it's fed voltage. When all of those 4 conditions are met that I talked about, the switch opens and the vapor is sucked out into the intake manifold. And the last question is, does the charcoal in your charcoal canister wear out? Yes, it will eventually wear out like any charcoal media does. Think about it in the same way that you think about charcoal in a fish tank filter. Fish tank filters that use charcoal will eventually wear out and you have to replace those. And the same thing with this. Now, how long does it take until you need to replace that? Well, Mazda says that it's 100,000 miles between each inspection of your entire Purge system, your vapor vent system. And that includes a charcoal canister. I would expect those to last 4 or 5 years. So I would say on average 4 or 5 years to replace a charcoal canister, and every 100,000 miles to inspect the integrity of the lines, and that includes going under the car all the way to the gas tank for your vapor line. And that's just for the fuel vapor system. That's not for the fuel system. I don't know what the recommended specs for that. You know, we'll get to that in another video more than likely. Today we're just talking about the fuel vapor system. So that's what I got, and I hope you learned a lot about your Purge solenoid. We're not going to be doing any diagnostics on this for this video. We'll do that in another video. I will do a video on testing that. That's just what I've learned so far, and as I learn it, you will learn it. It's an adventure that we take together. There you go.